Please welcome.
All right, so we've kind of gotten through the election and what it means. The one thing I didn't talk about really was the meaning of Georgia governor's race, and is there really any change? Does it have any economic impact? Will it influence anything here in the state, especially relevant to housing, which this show is about, the realestateexperts.com housing show? No. That's why I didn't spend a lot of time on the Georgia governor's race. I think it's irrelevant. Even if Stacey Abrams had won outright and became the next governor, I think people were very nervous about that. The woman's not going to get anything done for the same reason the House Democrats are going to have no impact. It's a red state controlled by red state legislators in the Dome of Dummies, Gold Dome, downtown. And nonetheless, whatever she wants, bully pulpit, maybe a few executive orders as a governor, but nothing that was meaningful or lasting. It would be the same problem Obama had. Once people realized what they had voted for, as a commander-in-chief or an executive branch of the government, they put the Republicans in charge to stop him from being too radical. That's what would have happened with Abrams. And in fact, Abrams has proven that she was a moderate. And I think that's one of the reasons that she wasn't able to get her message out, because there was a conflict, or she got her message out, but there was a conflict between who she said she was for this race and who she had been in the State House in terms of the range between the two, no matter what you think it's the case. The real problem, if we want to talk about it, is the elephant in the room that everyone's ignoring. It's not that the Republicans lost the House or the Republicans gained in the Senate or that Trump Willie was the only winner, not Democrats or Republicans, in terms of being able to get his agenda forged by putting the right people and getting them confirmed. That's the real story on the election. The real elephant in the room is the interest rate bubble. It's the financial environment. Again, some 10 years later, here we are. And are we staring at a mountain or a cliff? A valley or a cavern? A ladder or an illusion? Now, the reason I use those contrasting comparisons and adjectives is because I don't know that anyone knows, including me. What I do know is that I'm very nervous about the interest rate bubble. My last count, and I stopped counting a few months ago when the economy clearly was off to the races and there was no distressed environment anywhere in America anymore, except in pockets where there's just bad geography. But that said, that the overarching economy is strong, no doubt about it. Jobs are as good as they've been in a very long time. Wage growth is as high as it's been in a very long time. Now, one could argue it's very concerning that under those circumstances, there's enough dumb people in this country to change who's in power at a time like that in any segment of government. One could argue that point, and that would be my argument. However, I could also see the best argument to my argument, which is, well, sometimes it's good to put checks and balances in power so that they can't just run away with it. One of the problems leading up to the last boom and crash was what happened for a time under the early days of Bush, where they got whatever they wanted. And it became an arrogance, much like the Democrats did in the first 2 years of Obama. And look what it netted them, a decade of losses after losses. So having a small little pittance of a loss right now for conservatism and economic conservatism, fiscal conservatism, is probably the right amount of humility to make sure that we win next in a big way, so that we are humbled going into a big win instead of continuing to win and then ultimately having our butt handed to us like Obama did for the rest of his term. That's what I see here. But the interest rate bubble is a bigger problem. We printed $5 trillion in money. $5 trillion in money is a huge inflationary pressure and a monetary supply that is, let's just call it what it is. There's less dollars than that actually in the system. I think there's about $1 trillion actually printed, floating around in real paper value. There's a lot of gold, but we can't back up what we created. We did to our monetary environment what the mortgage companies did to the housing environment in 2004 to 2008. We created wealth out of thin air. We printed our way back to prosperity. And I don't think that people are taking with quite the gravity they need to what this means for interest rates. There's a lot of dollars out there that we printed. In fact, we didn't even print them. They're just they're physically listed on a sheet of paper or in a computer. And they were borrowed at really cheap rates. And they've driven the stock market through the roof because you could borrow money at virtually nothing, zero cost, to borrow money and invest it, which created demand in the stock market. And because of all of this money and all of this demand that you could borrow for virtually nothing, we, meaning big institutions mainly, had to do something with it. So they drove up value and assets in the stock market and bought up real estate all over the country that would have not been consumed. And I'm talking millions of homes at this point. There's millions of homes that got purchased in the last decade by people who were the benefactors of money borrowed at virtually nothing. Even if you borrowed money at 3.25% as an individual and bought 2 houses, and they're cash flowing and making a profit right now, because you should have been paying 6 or 7% or more for that money, you were a benefactor of borrowing money for virtually nothing. 3% is nothing. It's not even enough for the person making the 3%. If I lent you $100,000 today and charged you 4% on it, it will not make any sense. I'd be better off, because of the risk inherent with lending the money, even against an asset. I would have been better off to keep the money and let it depreciate, because the risk is, even making the 4%, I'm not going to even keep up with the cost of true inflation. And then I have the risk of loss, meaning you don't pay the bill back. I got to foreclose or regain the asset, and I lose 20% off the top. So the point is, you had to be big institutional. So the big institutionals, they borrow the money for nothing, virtually nothing. They buy up a bunch of assets because that creates massive demand on a fixed amount of supply. The cost of the assets go up, including housing. And here we are. And the first time that rates go up 1 single point, the market stops. The real estate market stops. Here we are. Now, I talk to agents, I hear what they say, and real estate agents and the real estate community, realtors or whatever you want to call it, all have the same problem. In 2007 December through 2008 December, this was going to be a small correction, according to realtors. Just a little bump in the road. Adjusting back to norms, right? This is the kind of language that this collective buffoonery used to describe what was about to be the biggest financial crisis perhaps in American history, and certainly since the Great Depression. Just a little correction. And it was enough to make me vomit, because you could see it in real time without being an economist. This thing is the essence of the wheels coming off, and they're calling it a mild correction, and they did this into almost 2009. So I want to remind you that as you look to the marketplace of people that have real estate licenses and mortgage operations and all these different things, their mentality is much different than mine. Their mentality is a scarcity mentality. Their mentality is that they're really the people Warren Buffett talk about when you've been swimming without your underwear on. You only find that out who they are when the tide goes out. These are the people with no underwear on, swimming in the ocean while the tide is up. The tide's going out. Their underwear, or lack thereof, is about to be revealed, in the old Warren Buffett analogy. And what I mean by that is they always say to you what they want the market to be. Not what it is, not what it's becoming, but what they want it to be, because as long as you'll believe it, you might buy just one more asset that can make them some money. I could care less. Whether you buy because the market's going up, or the market's going down, the market's in the toilet, or whatever, because I'm going to sell just as much one way or the other. I sell it. I have always sold at my capacity. Whatever I could sell, I could always max out to where I really can't sell anymore. That's why a lot of clients I turn away, because I don't need to have, 193 people selling $15 million a year in commission for me to feel good about myself. I don't really have that kind of drive anymore, because that's ego. I have the drive to run a profitable business and do good business, and that's that simple. So for me, it makes no difference whether I tell you the market sucks, which I think it does, or the market's really great, because it's just really whatever it is. And that's where I'm coming from. That's why I'm telling you this, because you're going to hear from the industry, oh, well, it's just the time of year. No, it's not. My three biggest months of the year are October, January, and April throughout the history of 20 cycles of that in real estate. And it didn't matter if the market was collapsing or on fire. It was always the same because of a number of factors I'm not going to bore you with right now. The market time of year doesn't matter. It's the strategy, the reality, and understanding the market that matters. So it doesn't matter when you sell. You cannot time the market. You do not time your way in and out based upon anything other than when it's time for you as an individual to sell, you sell. When it's time to buy, you buy. And the best acumen is when the market seems to need buyers, meaning there's too little inventory, too many buyers, you pick a point and you sell it. And you don't worry if you leave a little money on the table and it could have got more. Because if you didn't sell last April, you're now selling for less. And the reason is the interest rate. So when I call it the interest rate bubble, what I'm really referring to is the fact that even if rates by the Fed interest rate that they set don't go up this next time or the next time, there seems to be the monetary pressure for the interest rates on mortgages to go up. It doesn't matter what happens with these interest rates in the Fed, because when the Fed raises the rates or lower the rate does not mean that's what's going to happen to the mortgage rates. And the only thing that matters about the value of a home you own or the opportunity long-term of an investment is the economy and the market for which surrounds it and drives it. So if the job market in Atlanta is strong, but interest rates are going through the roof, the job market could be horrific and interest rates could be zero, and it could still be the same circumstance. There could be massive job loss and 0% interest rates and a terrible real estate market, or the best job market ever in Atlanta history and massive interest rates, and it's the same. And I'm going to explain why that is next, why the real estate market seems unhealthy.